don't want hair growing there, or else it's very uncomfortable.
Well, I'm glad you shared that with me.
Only 7 or 8 charging stations have been produced with a $7.5 billion investment.
Mobility is not a privilege, but a basic human right that must be available.
TikTok censors me for pushing back on trans insanity. Biden gives $50 million to radicals. Yale's insane DEI mandates get exposed, and we catch up with TikTok's most notorious fat activist. All this and so much more is coming up on today's episode of Brad vs. Everyone, my daily series where I take on the craziest ideas from our politics and from across the internet from a center-right, independent perspective. If you're new here, please consider subscribing and sticking around, and if you're a returning viewer, you know what I'm gonna say. Don't forget to hit that like button, and please do consider commenting with your thoughts. I do read the comments, and I pick a few to respond to in every episode. Now, I hope everybody's having a good Memorial Day, and not just enjoying the day off from work, but seriously taking some time to remember and be grateful for the many service members who've lost their lives to preserve our freedoms. It really is humbling to think about, and we shouldn't take what we have here in America for granted. Now, because I'm not taking the day off, I do have a show for you guys, and up first, we're going to talk about a little bit of a spat I'm having with TikTok. Because for some bizarre reason, TikTok has decided to shield a transgender TikToker from criticism for their inappropriate behavior in front of minors. That's right, you heard me correctly. Regular viewers of the show will remember that the other day we reacted to a video by the user Lily Tino, who identifies as a transgender woman and made a unusual video at Disney talking about genitalia and sex change surgery on genitalia while surrounded by children. As I am wont to do, I pushed back on this in the name of the LGBT community, calling it out for red flag behavior and for giving the LGBT community a bad name. I posted a clip to TikTok, and frankly the clip was pretty polite, if you ask me at least. Here's what I posted that got me in trouble with our TikTok overlords.
I'm gonna get banned from Disney. I swear, we're about to get banned from Disney. Last summer, I got my cake pops removed.
This sounds like way too much information.
And the plan up until recently was to get my marshmallow wand reconfigured into a marshmallow tunnel.
Yeah, that sounds bad.
Fortunately, a few weeks ago, I noticed some hair regrowth on my marshmallow wand. That's bad because the outside of the wand is what becomes the inside of the tunnel. So you don't want hair growing there, or else it's very uncomfortable.
Well, I'm glad you shared that with me.
The real problem here is the location.
I have so many questions!
At a place meant for children, where you're surrounded by children and they're so close that you can literally hear them in the background, you chose to talk about what's down there. That is disturbing, and it is frankly a massive, massive red flag.
Is the police here?
This video got removed for hate speech, and I got a strike against my account. We really do live in an upside down world, guys. A transgender TikToker can post an inappropriate video involving inappropriate conduct in front of minors. That's fine. That stays up. That user is completely unpunished. But me politely criticizing it gets censored. The most frustrating part is that if a straight person had done the same thing, I also would have criticized it. And in that case, I don't think TikTok would have censored me at all. It reminds me of that Family Guy clip that unfortunately was quite on the nose.
Excuse me, ma'am. No porn at the bar.
Oh, it's okay. I'm transgender.
Oh, I had no idea. Do whatever you want all the time.
You guys know I believe in full rights and equality for LGBT people, not just gay people, but also transgender people. But I don't believe in special rights or a special right to be protected from criticism when you've actually done something wrong. But apparently TikTok does. And I find it particularly objectionable because LGBT Americans were for so long wrongly and statistically inaccurately portrayed as posing some threat to minors. And now you have a prominent transgender TikToker actually behaving inappropriately in front of minors, which plays into that false stereotype and gives our whole community a very bad name and a very bad look. And simply people calling from within the house, hey, cut out that behavior politely, get censored for hate speech. But the inappropriate conduct is fine and is not just allowed to stay up, but is promoted to millions of people. If TikTok actively wanted to sabotage LGBT acceptance, I'm not sure what they would be doing differently. But what do you guys think? Am I off base here? Did I deserve to have this video taken down? Let me know in the comments. And now let's talk about the fact that President Biden is giving away $50 million of our tax money to a bizarre radical group. So you might remember that a while back, the president passed a multi-trillion-dollar spending bill called the Inflation Reduction Act that actually had nothing to do with reducing inflation. Even Bernie Sanders admitted as much. It was just a massive spending bill for green energy and the IRS and other pet projects of the Biden administration. Well, we're now seeing how that's working out, and frankly, some of it is bizarre. As the Wall Street Journal editorial board reports, Democrats appropriated $3 billion in the Inflation Reduction Act to the Environmental Protection Agency for, quote, environmental justice grants, including $600 million for a national grantmaker program. In December, the EPA awarded $50 million to Climate Justice Alliance, a network of nearly 90 affiliates which plans to use the money to, quote, resource community-based organizations to address past, current, and future environmental health and justice challenges. So, what is this Climate Justice Alliance group? I'm sure they just get up to very normal and sane environmental activism, right? Right? Well, as the Journal reports, what else does Climate Justice Alliance do? Last November, it helped to coordinate a march on Washington where protesters waved the banner, "Free Palestine is a climate justice issue," and "Only socialist revolution can stop World War III." That's right. The Biden administration gave $50 million to a group that advocates for socialist revolution in our tax money. The group also advocates for defunding Israel, abolishing prisons, and abolishing immigration and customs enforcement. As the Journal concludes about the group after perusing its materials and the other kinds of groups it works with, in other words, banishing fossil fuels won't be enough to arrest rising temperatures and sea levels. Israel, the military, the police, immigration enforcement, prisons, and capitalism all will have to go too. The EPA is funding radicals whose aim is to sow division and dismantle U.S. institutions. So I don't know about you guys, but I strongly object to my tax money being taken away from me by force and given to radical activist groups who are advocating for things that are strongly opposed to my values, and also have nothing to do with the environment. The Journal points out that there are two options here. One is that the Biden administration is just giving out these trillions of taxpayer dollars with little regard or care to what kind of groups they are giving our money to. Two is that they actually do know all about this group and choose to fund it anyway because they share its vision. I think it's probably the former rather than the latter, but either way, that's pretty alarming. And unfortunately, this is just one tiny example, but anytime you give the government the ability to spend trillions of taxpayer dollars on a favored, well-connected industry like the green industry, this kind of corruption, this kind of funneling money to radical and extreme groups is bound to happen. Meanwhile, the actual goals and policies that the money is supposed to be funding aren't working out so great. CBS News just confronted Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg on the fact that even though the Biden administration and Democrats through the Inflation Reduction Act invested $7.5 billion in the construction of electric vehicle charging stations back in 2021, years later, they've only built 7 or 8.
The Federal Highway Administration says only 7 or 8 charging stations have been produced with a $7.5 billion investment that taxpayers made back in 2021. Why isn't that happening more quickly?
So the president's goal is to have 500,000 chargers up by the end of this decade. Now, in order to do a charger, it's more than just plunking a small device into the ground. There's utility work, and this is also really a new category of federal investment. But we've been working with each of the 50 states. Every one of them is getting formula dollars to do this work, engaging them in the first handful. Again, by 2030, 500,000 chargers. And the very first handful of chargers are now already being physically built.
That's right. Billions of dollars, and they've built 7 or 8 charging stations. Remember this kind of thing the next time you hear all this great talk about how just give us trillions to spend and we will invest in a green economy and create jobs and all of this. Government isn't good at doing things. That's why we need to have extremely narrow roles for it that are limited to only the most essential things. not redesigning our society or investing trillions of dollars, because when we try to go down that path, corruption and dysfunction inevitably ensue. That's just my take. Let me know what you think. Are you okay with us spending all this money and just getting a couple of charging stations and giving millions of dollars to these radical activist groups? Let me know in the comments how you feel about your money going to work in this manner. And now let's check in on Yale, because some insane DEI mandates at Yale just got exposed. It just got revealed that Yale's biochemistry department has strong emphasis on DEI and whether a professor supports the DEI agenda when deciding who to hire for its science positions. As the Free Press reports, want to be a molecular biologist at Yale? Well, make sure you have a 10-step plan for dismantling systemic racism. When making hires at Yale's Department of Molecular Biophysics and Biochemistry, faculty are told to, quote, place DEI at the center of every decision, according to a document tucked away on its website. Meanwhile, every job advertised on the site links to a DEI rubric that tests candidates' knowledge of DEI and commitment to promoting DEI, their past DEI experiences and activities, and their future DEI goals and plans. Remember, guys, DEI refers to diversity, equity, and inclusion, which sounds nice, but is actually a pretty progressive and pretty radical vision of racial politics in America. But apparently at Yale, they only want to hire people to do molecular biophysics if they have the right race politics, because that seems super relevant to their job description. As the Free Press further reports, the questions are designed to find out how they would infuse diversity, equity, and inclusion, a focus on race, gender, sexual orientation, and other categories of marginalization into their work. Applicants for professor and lecturer jobs, currently advertised on the site, will get 0 points if they have no knowledge or awareness about DEI issues, do not feel personal responsibility for helping to create an equitable and inclusive environment, were not involved in activities that promote DEI, and have no goals or plans for promoting DEI. But they are marked exceptional if they have clear knowledge of DEI issues, can demonstrate strong interest in contributing to promoting DEI in teaching, have a sustained track record of multiple efforts in promoting DEI, and show a clear and detailed plan for promoting DEI through teaching. So essentially, they will punish applicants who just want to teach science and don't want to infuse it with radical progressive politics. And they will favor applicants who have the right brand of political ideology, even though that in no way makes them more or less qualified to teach molecular biophysics. This basically is an ideological litmus test. As the Free Press further notes, the assessment puts the thumb on the scale for those with progressive sensibilities. Scientists can earn a high score in the category of DEI knowledge by showing they understand the, quote, specific challenges faced by underrepresented minorities, a criterion likely to favor those with a strong faith in the concepts of microaggressions, implicit bias, and systemic racism. First and foremost, this is just a massive free speech and academic freedom issue. Professors should not be punished for holding the wrong views, especially when those views are totally unrelated to the subjects they're teaching. Secondly, it's a disturbing turn even further away from meritocracy at America's supposedly elite universities. Even at Yale, they are no longer hiring the best and brightest scientific minds, but instead emphasizing and prioritizing ideology and politics. If it's happening there, I bet it's happening at many other institutions as well. And that's really concerning, because the fight for cutting-edge science and scientific research will shape the future of our economy, and in many cases is literally a question of life and death. The people running America's higher education institutions instead want to play politics. To me, that is absolutely unacceptable and irresponsible, and a complete dereliction of the duty they have both to their institutions and to the country. But that's just my take. Let me know what you think in the comments below, and if you've encountered DEI mandates in your field or your career. And now it's time for Brad versus TikTok, my segment where I take on the craziest and cringiest ideas from the Clock app.
Pronoun of the day is slugs.
If you're new here, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, and don't forget to hit that like button as we go along, and comment with your thoughts. I do read the comments. Now let's catch up with our good old buddy Jaebae, one of the most prominent fat positivity activists on TikTok. She's been posting a lot lately, and some of her posts have stirred up some debate.
Let's get something straight. Access to public transportation, including air travel, is a civil right. That means plus-size people do deserve to travel comfortably and without discrimination. It's not about entitlement, it's about basic human rights. Everybody should be able to fly safely and comfortably just as they are, and let's address the common misconception, my extra seats are always paid for. Doesn't mean I agree that plus-size people should have to pay more, because I don't think we should have to pay more for the space that we physically need. Your comment that implies I don't deserve anything because I'm fat is exactly why I'm fighting. I'm fighting so other plus-size people don't have to deal with your negativity and discrimination. We all deserve respect and dignity regardless of size. It's time the airline industry recognized this and took steps to ensure it. Here's a powerful reminder as we strive for a more equitable and inclusive world. Let us remember that mobility is not a privilege but a basic human right that must be available, affordable, accessible, and safe for all.
So there's a lot to unpack here, and I don't love that she uses the creepy AI voice for her videos, but it is what it is. First, she raises this interesting question of whether access to transportation is a civil right or a human right. And the answer requires some nuance. As a human being, you do have a human right to the freedom of movement, the freedom to travel. However, that is a negative right, meaning the only thing you have a right to is to not be forcibly blocked from going where you want. You don't have a right to other people facilitating your transportation and all your needs and wants. I mean, if I had a human right to that, then what? Taxpayers should pay for a private jet to come pick me up and take me to New York City whenever I want? All air travel should be free and taxpayers should just have to fund anybody who wants to go anywhere, wherever they want, whenever? In practice, air travel is not a right. It is a privilege. Only people who can afford it, and it usually isn't cheap, can do it. And the companies have the right to ban you from their airlines if they want. You don't need to fly to Cabo to survive. Like, this is an extra thing we're talking about. This is a luxury. This is a privilege. This is not a fundamental human right. And more than anything, what you absolutely do not have a right to is to force other people to pay your way, which this creator actually says that they shouldn't have to pay for the extra seats they need. They should get 2 or 3 seats for the price of 1. And while I agree that fat people shouldn't be discriminated against or punished because of their choices and because of their body size, they're also not entitled to extra perks and privileges or to make other people pay more, which is inevitably what would happen if they get free seats. The other seats become more expensive because they're more scarce, or if tax money is used to do it, then that's on the taxpayers. And we'll come to this in the next video as well, but there's something offensive about the way she seems to conflate body size with immutable characteristics and civil rights law, like things like race or sexual orientation that are not choices, but are simply immutable characteristics. Whereas, I mean, there are some exceptions to this, but generally speaking, most morbidly obese people, it is a product of their own choices and actions, and it's something they could change if they chose to. But Jaebae apparently does not view it that way.
I saw this ridiculous comment claiming discrimination is only about race, religion, or sex, not weight. Seriously. Let's set the record straight about weight-based discrimination. Discrimination is the unjust or prejudicial treatment of different categories of people, especially on the grounds of ethnicity, age, sex, disability, and/or, wait for it, weight. Weight-based discrimination, or weight stigma, is the discriminatory treatment of people based on their size and weight. It can lead to exclusion, marginalization, and inequities. Newsflash. Weight isn't just about eating habits. Genetics, metabolism, mental health, and money play big roles. Blaming it all on overeating. That's ignorant. FYI, some states and cities actually have laws against weight-based discrimination. There are also advocacy groups out there fighting for more protections. Weight-based discrimination often intersects with other biases. Imagine being judged for your race and weight at the same time. It amplifies the impact and makes life even harder for those already facing multiple forms of discrimination. Weight-based discrimination is real and harmful. So instead of spreading misinformation, educate yourself. Google is free. And remember, ignorance isn't bliss, it's just lazy.
I know she did not just call us lazy. Girl! So this video and this argument is totally incoherent. First, let's clarify what we mean when we talk about discrimination. Discrimination simply means treating people differently on the basis of something. We engage in discrimination all day, every day, and many forms of it aren't bad at all. We discriminate against the people we find unpleasant to be around by not befriending them and not inviting them to things. We discriminate against people who don't work as hard by not offering them promotions. We discriminate against people who are unkind by keeping them at arm's length. We discriminate against people with criminal records by not wanting to hire them or live next door to them or what have you. Like, this is just a normal part of life. When we talk about discrimination, though, what we're usually really referring to is invidious discrimination, malicious discrimination on the basis of characteristics people can't control. It's not wrong to judge someone or treat them differently based on their actions and the things they do and choose. But it is wrong to judge or just treat people differently on the basis of things they have no control over. And while I do acknowledge that things like genetics or socioeconomics do influence weight, it is ultimately, for almost all individuals, a product of their choices, especially when we're talking about not a little bit overweight, but like massively, massively overweight. That doesn't just happen to people who eat a normal diet and who have some degree of an active lifestyle. They don't just end up 450 pounds. That's not a thing that happens, with maybe the most rarest of exceptions. So to be clear, there are some scenarios where it is perfectly acceptable to discriminate against overweight people. If I'm picking people for my track team, I'm probably not going to pick anybody who's morbidly obese. Now, there are some scenarios where I think it would be wrong to make that kind of discrimination. For example, you shouldn't not be friends with somebody just because they're overweight, because they might still be a sweet and lovely person. It has no bearing on their personality or their actions or their kindness towards other people, which is what should matter when it comes to determining your friends. But it's an entirely different thing than, say, like race, where there is simply no excuse. Like, there's never an appropriate time to adversely discriminate against somebody because of their race. Fatness or weight is just fundamentally different from these other civil rights categories that Jaebae is conflating it with. And that's actually insulting to those people, to conflate your choices with their immutable characteristics. You should be able to advocate for dignified and respectful treatment of overweight people without engaging in this kind of disingenuous and frankly offensive conflation. That's just my take on it, and who knows, maybe that's just my thin privilege showing, or something. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Do you agree with me, or do you agree with Jaebae? And don't forget to hit that like button if you found this video entertaining. Now, before we wrap up today's show and I enjoy the rest of Memorial Day off, I'll read a few of your comments that you left on the last episode. One person writes, "I see a pierced septum I avoid like the plague." So here's the thing. I try very hard not to judge people, and I will say there's exceptions to every rule. So I've met some people who have the bull nose ring or whatever who are lovely. Like 9 times out of 10, that nose ring, the bull nose ring, is a sign you're about to see, especially on TikTok, you're about to see the worst take of your life. Like 90+% of the time, that rule holds. I'm sorry, I'm just being honest with y'all. But if you're a fan of my channel and you have one of those, you're the 1 out of 10, baby. Another person says, "Brad, I get that you don't want your channel to be a safe space, but who do you think your fans are? I'm a white, gay, right-leaning American. I watch your content because it's comforting. It's a safe space." So this comment was really interesting to me, and I think it depends on a couple of things. First, you might be surprised about what my viewer demographics actually are. For example, the majority of my YouTube viewers are actually women, which surprised me when I first learned it, because I too would have thought it was a lot of gay men, and it is, to be clear, a good amount of gay men, but it's not exactly the breakdown that you might think. It's actually a very diverse audience in a lot of ways. But two, what I mean by not wanting it to be a safe space is simply that you will be exposed sometimes to ideas you disagree with or to arguments that make you uncomfortable or challenge your beliefs. That's what I mean. I don't want it to be intellectually comforting. I do, of course, want it to be entertaining and easy to listen to. I don't want it to be upsetting or aggressive or anything like that. But I mean, I don't want it to be an intellectual safe space. Another person says, "Love your videos, Brad. I got oral surgery and I'm in a lot of pain right now, but your videos always make me feel better." I am so happy that they could help in some small way as you go through that. I actually had a really tough time when I got my wisdom teeth out in college. It hit me so worse. I had an adverse reaction to one of the drugs I was prescribed, and I was like miserable for weeks. This is the thing I love about what I do. Like, the idea that me making videos in my home office is helping people get through tough times, like that's so meaningful to me, guys. And honestly, I'm humbled by it. Another person said, and I think this was in response to my thing about insane DEI in medical schools, I stopped going to the doctors years ago. Now, it's your life, it's your body, you should do what you feel is right. But I will say, I do encourage you to get a checkup, because there's stuff that's preventable that could hopefully be detected early. So while I too understand why some people are losing confidence in some parts of the medical system, ultimately, totally opting out is not something I recommend. Another person says the focus for DEI is in the wrong place. To increase diversity in professions, the school system needs to be overhauled so that disadvantaged neighborhoods are receiving as good an education as privileged private schools. When everyone gets an equitable education, everyone then has an equal chance to enter college based on merit. Yeah, I agree with this. The problem with the affirmative action DEI style approach is that they try to skip at the end of the process to jerry-rig the outcomes towards equality. But what they really need to do is go back to the beginning and see why is the inequality emerging and try to fix the source so that over time it corrects, but not just jerry-rig an equal outcome at the end by putting unqualified people in positions or discriminating against some groups to help others. That doesn't fix the root of the problem, and it also unfairly treats people and inflames racial tensions and divisions. Another person said, I wanted to tell you how much I enjoy this show. I've become a daily viewer. I am a granola crunching, Birkenstock and sock wearing liberal, and I find your takes on daily political craziness a refreshing change from most internet talking heads. Thank you. I'm glad that people who are center left or liberal leaning can still find the show entertaining. Kudos to you for having an open mind and keeping it open. All right, everybody, we will leave it there for today's episode of Brad versus Everyone. Thanks so much for tuning in. Please do consider subscribing and sticking around if you're new here. And regardless, don't forget to hit that like button and comment with your thoughts before you go. And with that, we'll talk again tomorrow.